One elder, with hair as white as the clouds, spoke softly. You are not cursed because of your work. You are cursed because of your pride. You believed your skill was enough without considering the deeper meaning of your craft. Another elder added, You must learn to see without seeing, to trust your hands, your hearts, and your connection with those you serve. In a peaceful village nestled between tall baobab trees and the flowing river, there lived a husband and wife, Awa and Kaï. Awa was known for her breathtaking skills in braiding hair. Her hands moved like a gentle wind, creating intricate designs that made women feel like queens. Kaï, her handsome husband, was a barber. He was the best in the land, known for his sharp blade and steady hand, cutting the men's hair into perfect shapes. One day, an old traveler, with eyes as dark as night, came to their shops. She asked for a hairstyle and a haircut, but warned them not to use mirrors while working. Awa, confident in her skill, laughed. My hands know the way through hair better than my eyes. Kaï, too, smiled. I don't need a mirror to see my work is good. The old traveler smiled coldly and left, but her words echoed in their minds. That night, as the moon rose, all the mirrors in their shops shattered with a loud crack. Awa and Kaï realized that they had been cursed. They could no longer use mirrors, and if they did, they would be blinded. The next day, Awa and Kaï were determined to keep working, even without mirrors. Awa sat her first customer in the chair, her fingers weaving through the hair with precision. But without the mirror to guide her, the braids came out uneven and messy. Her customer frowned and left without a word. Kaï, too, struggled as his razor slipped, leaving the man's hair uneven and poorly shaped. Days passed, and Awa and Kaï became frustrated. They had never struggled with their work before. The villagers began to whisper, They have lost their touch, some said. Others believed that their pride had brought the curse upon them. Awa and Kaï began to doubt themselves. The joy they once felt in their craft was replaced with sorrow. They realized that without mirrors, they had lost more than just a tool. They had lost confidence in themselves. As time passed, fewer people came to Awa and Kaï's shops. The joy that once filled the air, the laughter, and the lively conversations had vanished. Awa would sit by the river, watching her reflection ripple in the water, wondering if she would ever regain her skill. Kaï sat in silence in his empty shop, running his hands through his own hair, lost in thought. One day, Awa turned to Kaï with tears in her eyes. What if we are never good enough without the mirrors? She asked, her voice breaking. Kaï, though heavy-hearted, placed a hand on her shoulder. We must find a way, Awa. We must learn to see with our hearts, not with our eyes. Despite their sadness, they knew they had to try again. They couldn't let the curse break their spirits. Desperate, Awa and Kaï went to the village elders, wise men and women who had lived through many storms and trials. The elders listened to their story, nodding as they spoke of the old traveler and the broken mirrors. One elder, with hair as white as the clouds, spoke softly. You are not cursed because of your work. You are cursed because of your pride. You believed your skill was enough without considering the deeper meaning of your craft. Another elder added, You must learn to see without seeing, to trust your hands, your hearts, and your connection with those you serve. Awa and Kaï listened carefully, understanding that their challenge was not just about the mirrors, but about trusting themselves. The elders gave them advice. Work slowly. Feel the hair. Listen to your instincts. The mirror is not the source of your skill. Awa and Kaï returned to their shops with new hope. They took the elders' advice to heart and began to work slowly, carefully. Awa no longer rushed through the braids, but instead felt each strand of hair, letting her hands guide her. She began to smile again as her fingers remembered the joy of creating beautiful patterns. Kaï, too, slowed down. He listened to the sound of his razor cutting through the hair, felt the way it moved across the scalp. He stopped worrying about perfection and trusted his instincts. As they focused on the process, the joy they had once lost slowly returned. Their customers began to leave with smiles once again, and the whispers in the village quieted. The curse was still there, but Awa and Kaï were learning to live with it. Months passed, and Awa and Kaï became known for their skill once again. But one day, a rich man from a far-off land arrived in the village. He had heard of their curse and brought with him an expensive mirror, framed in gold and encrusted with gems. "If you use this mirror," the man said, "it will show you your work in perfect detail. You will be the best in the land again, even better than before." Awa and Kaï looked at the mirror, tempted by the beauty and the promise of perfection. But then Awa remembered the elder's words. "The mirror is not the source of your skill." Kaï shook his head. "We do not need this," he said firmly. "We have learned to trust ourselves, and that is more valuable than any mirror." The rich man left, disappointed, but Awa and Kaï stood together, knowing they had made the right choice. Word of Awa and Kaï's choice spread throughout the village. The people admired their strength and integrity. Inspired by their story, the villagers began to come together to help each other. Mothers taught daughters to braid without looking in mirrors, and fathers passed down the art of grooming with only the feel of the razor on the skin. Awa and Kaï's shops became gathering places, not just for haircuts and braids, but for stories, laughter, and learning. The curse, which had once been a source of fear, became a lesson for the entire village. People began to trust themselves more and rely less on outward appearances. One day, while Awa was braiding a young girl's hair, she had a moment of realization. She closed her eyes and let her hands work purely by instinct. She felt the rhythm of the braids, the flow of the hair, and a deep sense of peace washed over her. When she opened her eyes, the braids were perfect. She had finally learned to trust her inner vision, the skill that did not rely on mirrors or even sight. Awa realized that the curse had been a gift, teaching her to see with her heart and hands rather than her eyes. Kaï, too, reached a turning point in his journey. One day, a man with thick, unruly hair sat in his chair, nervous about the cut. Without the mirror, Kaï knew the man couldn't see what he was doing. Kaï had always relied on his customers' reactions in the mirror to adjust his cuts, but now he had to trust his hands and experience alone. As the razor moved through the man's hair, Kaï closed his eyes, just as Awa had done. He let his instincts guide him. He felt the contours of the man's head, the way the hair fell naturally. He worked with the rhythm of the hair, not against it. When he finished, he opened his eyes and saw that the cut was perfect, clean, sharp, and stylish. The man stood up, nervous but trusting Kaï's skill. When he felt his hair and saw the admiring gazes of those around him, he smiled broadly. "You didn't need a mirror," he said. "You just needed to believe." Kaï smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. Like Awa, he had learned that his skill was not just in his hands, but in the confidence he carried within him. The curse had taught him to trust not only his craft, but his heart. One evening, as the village gathered around the fire for stories and music, the mysterious old traveler returned. Her eyes, once cold and dark, now shimmered with a softer light. She approached Awa and Kaï, her steps slow and deliberate. "You have learned much," she said, her voice filled with both sadness and pride. "The curse I placed upon you was not to punish you, but to teach you. I see now that you have discovered the true meaning of your craft. You no longer need mirrors because you see clearly within yourselves." Awa and Kaï stood together, holding hands. They no longer felt anger or fear toward the traveler. Instead, they were grateful for the journey she had set them on. "Does this mean the curse is lifted?" Awa asked, her voice steady. The traveler nodded. Yes, the mirrors in your shops are restored, and you may use them again if you wish. But you will find that you no longer need them. You have become greater than any reflection could show. With that, the traveler disappeared into the night, leaving behind a gentle breeze and the sound of the river flowing softly in the distance. The villagers cheered, celebrating the end of the curse, but Awa and Kaï smiled knowingly. They had learned the greatest lesson of all. True skill and beauty come from within. Years later, Awa and Kaï's story became a legend passed down through generations. Their shops remained open, but they rarely used mirrors, even after the curse was lifted. They had discovered that the mirror was not necessary for greatness. Instead, they taught their apprentices to trust themselves, to work with their hands and hearts, and to let go of fear. The villagers still came to Awa and Kaï, not just for their braids and haircuts, but for their wisdom. Awa often sat by the river, teaching young girls how to braid, while sharing the stories of their ancestors. Kaï, with a gentle smile, passed on his knowledge of barbering to young boys, reminding them that patience and trust in oneself were the greatest tools of all. And, whenever anyone asked how they had overcome the curse, Awa would smile and say, "We learned to see without our eyes." Kaï would add, "The heart has better vision than any mirror." Moral of the story. The tale of Awa and Kaï teaches that true skill and greatness come not from what we can see, but from what we can feel and trust within ourselves. External tools, like mirrors, are useful, but they are not what defines our worth or ability. Confidence, patience, and self-trust are the most powerful gifts. Proverb: the heart sees more clearly than the eyes. Please subscribe on the channel and like the video.